Just going to start off with Sharon Venne. She's awesome speaker in regards to the legal issues in regards to our treaty. So I welcome Sharon Venne.
Hi, hi. Nia no te kwa mosko montokan. Veyaso Dodam. I am old woman bear sitting next to the crater, and I'm from the Thunderbird Bear Clan. I didn't travel to your gathering, so I'm living in Alberta, and it's COVID central, the highest infection rates in Canada, even higher than Ontario. So I thought it would not be a good idea to travel to your gathering. And I appreciate the invitation. And I would have loved to have been there because I always enjoy coming into your territory and greeting many people that I know and have met over the years. So thank you very much for inviting me. Uh, I noticed that your theme this year, rekindling our council fires, which is really an appropriate way to start moving the discussion because we have to rekindle in light of what's been happening with COVID, and we've had to rethink everything that's going on, and the creation has been suffering because of what the human has been doing, and so we have to rethink what we're up to and how we're approaching things. And so we need to uh, look at how we're going to move forward. And this is not a one-sided conversation. Our conversation is with our obligations, responsibility to the creation. That's where our conversation starts. And I noticed in your declaration, you from September 9th, 2020, it does talk about the rights and responsibilities given to us by the Creator, and how we have to move forward with that. So there's that conversation that needs to continue to take place, and that needs to be re, re, reimagined and strengthened because our creation is suffering, and things have been done to the creation which has caused great harm not only to the human but to other living and beings, including our environment. Well, everything within the environment and the animals. So we need to rethink about that. And I always tell people that it's not about the money. If we focused on that, we forget about what our other obligations are. So we need to. That's part of it. That they have taken our resources without acknowledging their gifts. And I always remind people about what happened with the buffalo out west here on Turtle Island. You know, there were millions and millions of buffalo, and now they're just they're here and there, but nothing like it used to be. And they don't travel on the land anymore, and the land is suffering because of that. There's a big drought in Western Canada, and they're saying, "Oh, no rain," but I think it's because the buffalo are not carrying the water anymore. They used to, lay on the ground and they would roll and they would make hollows. And in those hollows, the rain would gather. And so in those little hollows would be birds and frogs and other insects and other things would be there. And they would be able to re-nourish our land and bring the water back. They don't travel anymore. And one time an elder told me, he asked me a question. He said, "Why do you think the buffalo um, have left?" And I said, "Well, they were killed. They were hunted." And he said, "Yes, that's true. They were." But he said, "What happened was when those people killed them, they never gave thanks to the Creator for the spirit of that buffalo. And so then, when they went back to the creation decided that because of the way they were uh, killed, that they would not send that spirit back. That's why the buffalo diminished in numbers. And that's why we continue to do the buffalo ceremonies so that the buffalo can return to us. It's the same thing we had a long time ago. We used to have horses here on Great Turtle Island, long before the other people came to our island. But the horses disappeared. And why was that? Because we were abusing them, and the Creator took them back. But we have a horse ceremony, and we've always done the horse ceremony, even when we didn't have. Then we knew about them, and so when they came back, I don't know how long they were gone for, but then when they came back, we always honor and protect and try to be thankful that the horses have returned to us, and we still do the horse ceremonies. We have the horse dance. We have all the songs related to that ceremony. And so I was trying to tell somebody one time that, we had horses here before these people came across the water, and they said, "Oh, no, 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 you don't know what you're talking about. You never had horses before. Europeans, blah blah blah." They went on and on, and then lo and behold, there was a some kind of uh, dig that was taking place in the foothills of the Rocky Mountains, which is west, to the west, and they found a skeleton of a horse, or something like 75,000 years old skeleton. Well, okay, now they have the evidence, so we can put that in their faces and say, yeah, we did. Here's the evidence, because those people that came across the waters, um, they have a very strange relationship with their creation. They don't believe anything unless they see it with their own eyes, and that's a problem, because what they don't recognize is at the time the treaty was made in 1850, there was a witness to that treaty, and that witness was the Creator. That's why we lift our pipes. That's why we do the ceremonies to thank that Creator who put us here. That's what it says in your declaration. I like the way it's worded. Uh, we were placed here, and being placed here gives us huge authority. It also gives us great responsibility and obligation to the creation. And so, that's what we have to sort of focus our attention on, and work from the laws that were given to us. We're not making laws. We're not recreating laws. We already have them. So what we're doing is what you're saying in your title of your conference today, rekindling. Those laws are there. They've always been there ever since we arrived on Great Turtle Island. Every spirit that comes here, every time a child is born, and I hear that there's a new child waiting to come, every time that child comes, it's a spirit that comes here with all the understanding and obligations of the creation. And so we're rekindling those little fires that come through the birth of children. That's why in the West we say our treaties were made for as long as the sun shines, the grass grows, and the waters flow. And the waters were referred to as the birth. When the women give birth, the water that breaks, that's what the treaties are tied to out here in the West. So I think we need to reimagine how we approach these things, because the treaty made in 1850, there was no Canada, there was no province of Ontario. We made the treaty with the Crown, and that was based on the treaties that were made prior to that. And I was looking at your really beautifully done document that was sent to me about the Robinson Huron with all the wampum belts. And when you look at those wampum belts, those were not, those ideas did not come from across the water. Those ideas and those values came from our laws, from our understanding of our relationship to our own legal system. So those are very strong evidence of our own legal system. We don't need them to validate our legal system. We already have it validated. So we have to be careful how we refer to it, how we refer to what we're doing, because what happens is if you play around with the English language, for example, you can get yourself into trouble. And I always remind chiefs not to say in when we're talking about the treaties that we signed treaty. No, we entered into treaty, because signing treaties makes sort of shifts the narrative to the other side, and the other side says, well, it's not written down because it's signed. No, if you enter into treaties, then you can use the oral tradition of treaties. And I just want to, and the oral understanding of treaties, which is really important component of the treaties. If you look at the International Convention on Treaties, the Vienna Convention on Treaties, what it says, I believe it's Article 3, says that oral treaties and written treaties in international law have the same weight. They're at the same level. One is not higher than the other. Now, this baby state of Canada, it's only been here a very short period of time on Turtle Island. They'll try to tell you that the written version is more important than the oral, when it's the other. They're not one, or they're the same. And so when we have an oral understanding of the treaty, and our treaty was not made with Canada. Our treaties were not made with Canada. They were made with the Crown, and the Crown made Canada. So Canada is below us. So when you're talking about treaty, you have to know at what level you're discussing these discussions, because it's like me sitting down and having a conversation with the janitor in the Department of Indian Affairs building in Gatineau. It might be an interesting conversation, but what right does the janitor have to make decisions? It's like going across the other side and talking to whoever's in the office in Prime Minister's office. Who cares who's sitting there? Doesn't matter, because that's not who we have to engage. What we have to do is engage the Crown. And the Crown is the one that needs to be engaged. And we need to figure out how to do that. Because what the government of Canada has very successfully and skillfully done is they have shifted us away from discussion with the Crown. And what they have done is they put themselves there and said, you have to talk to us. Well, who gave them the authority to speak to us? Because that's what needs to be talked about. Now, internationally speaking, going back to the Vienna Convention, that was adopted in 1977. And very early on, Indigenous peoples, I'm not only talking about Turtle Island Indigenous peoples, I'm talking about Indigenous peoples from other parts of the world. The Maori in Aotearoa, New Zealand, the Mapuches in the South America, the Kuna, the Maasai in Africa. Other indigenous peoples started saying, "What is the international, arena saying about all these treaty obligations?" And so we pushed for a study at the United Nations, not a study about whether or not these treaties are international. Because if the United Nations is undertaking a study, it's an international subject, so we don't need to go there. Although Canada tried to stop it, Canada blocked the study from 1983 until 1989. So 6 years they threw all their resources and everything to stop the study from going forward in the UN, in the United Nations. But I always tell people on March the 3rd, 1989, Friday, March the 3rd, or Thursday, I'm not sure, I think maybe it might be Thursday, at 11:45 at night, the United Nations voted to undertake a study on treaties. Not whether or not these treaties are international, because once they voted that they were going to do the study, they accepted that these treaties were international between Indigenous people, with Indigenous peoples. What the United Nations was trying to figure out was what could the United Nations do to assist Indigenous peoples with the implementation of their treaties? That's a very different question. And the study, and it should be talked about more, but the study concluded that there was a number of steps that the United Nations could undertake in relation to assisting Indigenous peoples with the implementation of treaties. So that's an international component that really need to look at and to talk about. Because what Canada and the two countries that were against the study, by the way, were Canada and the United States. Uh, Not a big leap there, but you know why they were against it. But anyway, they have tried to suppress in the most devious ways uh, the results of the treaty study and the work that needs to be undertaken within the UN system. So that's sitting out there. It's done since 1999. It was adopted within the UN system. So it is a study. It's done, and it does have a number of recommendations and conclusions. And one of the most important things relates to the development of a parallel, not incorporated within the state system, but a parallel legal system that recognizes that Indigenous laws are in existence and that Indigenous laws can and should be used for the review of treaties when you have a treaty dispute. And if you can't resolve it within the present state, that there should be an international mechanism where this could happen. Now, the I don't want to go into too much detail, but the original idea was that I don't know if you recall, in South Africa there used to be this apartheid system where blacks and whites were separated, actually built on Canadian model of the Indian Act, the past system. But anyway, I won't go into that. But so what the apartheid center within the United Nations building did is that they used to document and catalog the abuses of the anti-apartheid laws or resolutions that are adopted by the United Nations. And they would report on a yearly basis about, like companies that were trading in South Africa, things that were going on in violation of the apartheid laws and stuff that the United Nations had done. So there was a whole center developed and cataloging abuses and stuff, which would make reports to the General Assembly. This is really important for us in relation to treaties because during the study of the treaties, I was asked by the special rapporteur, Miguel Alfonso Martinez, if I would do something for him. And I said, well, I don't know. I'll try. I don't know what you want me to do. But he said, I'd like you to meet with the treaty commissioners in Canada. There's two of them, one in Saskatchewan, one in Manitoba. I'd like you to meet with them and I'd like you to explore with them how they could submit their reports to the United Nations for oversight so that we could look at them and see what's in there and if there's anything that could be helpful to move this issue. So I did go ahead and I had a meeting with them. And I was told quite bluntly that their reports cannot be sent directly to the United Nations. It would have to go from the Minister of Indian Affairs because that's who they report to. So it's really not an international treaty commissioner. It's sort of a stopgap thing that they do. So I reported that back to him, and I said I don't think that they're going to submit their reports. They won't submit their reports to you or to any of the United Nations because they go to Canada first. And whether or not Canada will submit them to the UN is another question. But I think as Indigenous nations, we have the right to submit reports directly. Now the question is to where, because the Canada and the United States have really gutted the UN's ability to review Indigenous issues. The expert mechanism does not do that, and neither does the permanent form. We'll see what the special rapporteur now does or says in relation to this, because he's from Guatemala. We'll see what he does, but there is, we have been working directly with other agencies within the United Nations to bring treaty issues. And we have submitted and filed a lot of materials at the Committee on the Elimination of Racial Discrimination, which has told Canada that our rights on lands and resources have been violated. Our right to free, prior, and informed consent has been violated, and Canada has been told that they have to comply with these rulings, but Canada stonewalls because people don't know what these committees do in Canada. They don't understand them, so they don't. Nobody responds to that. So we need to continue to push that. We've also filed complaints with the Committee on the Rights of the Child that they see 92 legislation as a violation of our treaty rights in relation to our children. We've also, filed other complaints with other mechanisms within the United Nations, and have been working with the World Health Organization in relation to pandemic. Because in Treaty 6, where I am originally from, uh, I'm now married into Treaty 7, but originally from Treaty 6, and they have a medicine chest clause, access to medicine. But the other thing that is in the treaty says that in a time of pestilence, the crown is supposed to help our peoples. So how come at the time of pestilence, Canada had zero plans to help Indigenous nations in relation to this pestilence or COVID virus that was circulating? They had zero plans, and what they did is they gave monies on directly on our right for us to the provinces, and then made us apply for the monies as of grant writers, I am I would use a word that is probably not good for mixed company, about how I feel about that. That they turned us into proposal writers, that we're nations, and now we're being forced to write proposals to get the funds that we should have by right, legal right under the crown. So I think we need to really look at that relationship and what happened, because the state, it doesn't matter it's whoever is in government, the state is using their supposed authority to diminish and denigrate the treaties. And I think that's a real treaty violation that should be brought to the attention of the United Nations. The other thing that I just want to touch on briefly, as I see my time is coming to an end, is that we need to reimagine how we're going to talk to these people, uh, the Queen's subjects. I never refer to Canadian citizens or the government of Canada anymore. I refer to them as the Crown's servants, the Crown's subjects, because only the Crown makes the Prime Minister and the premiers, like a lieutenant governor swears in the premier and his cabinet, the Crown. Mary Simon is now the Governor General. She's the one that swears in the government of Canada. So this is my go-to thinking about when I've been talking to the leadership and our clan mothers and other people, saying to them, next year, 2022, Her Majesty the Queen Elizabeth, direct descendant of the queens and the kings that made treaty with us, she will be on the throne 70 years. It's our platinum jubilee. On the 6th of February 2022, she will be on the throne 70 years. And they are planning to have a humongous celebration in London in June 2022. I have been telling the leadership, and they had a Treaties 1 to 11 meeting about 2 weeks ago. And I said to the chiefs at that time and the leadership, you have to write a letter to Her Majesty at Windsor Castle, telling her that you entered into treaties with her ancestors, peace and friendship treaties, and that you want to participate in the celebrations of her 70th year on the throne, not as members of Canada or a delegation of Canada or a Canadian citizen, but as a treaty citizen, and that you want to come to London at the beginning of June because you're allied to the crown. And as an ally to the crown, you want to be there. You want to be involved in the celebration of her 70th anniversary. Don't wait too long, because normally Buckingham Palace and Palace Protocol, they send out invitations 6 months before the event. The event is in June, so I would say you should get your letters into the crown, not as Canadian citizens, because when they had the 60th anniversary of her on the throne, they had all kinds of people, like they had a big parade down the Thames, the river in London, and the Maori were there with their wakas, the Aboriginals were there, the Maasai were there, all kinds of indigenous peoples were there who made treaty with the crown. Guess who was not there? We were not there. And so baby Canada will not want us to be there. Baby Trudeau will not want us to be there. The toolbox will not want us to be there. None of these people want us to be there, but we have a treaty with the crown and we have the right to be there. So we need to invoke that and we need to do that. So just send, Her Majesty the Queen, Windsor Castle, UK, ma'am, we are relatives and descendants of the people who made treaty with your ancestors, 1850. We want to celebrate and participate in your Platinum Jubilee in London in June 2022 as allies to the crown. That kind of thing. So, because you need to act, if you say, as you said in your declaration, we are sovereign, we have an inherent right of sovereignty, then you have to act it. You have to do it. Don't ask anybody. You have the authority. Do it. Write a letter. You have all the wampum bells. I seen them on the table when they scanned the room. So I recognized them, and I acknowledge the spirits there. And I just like to thank, before I quit here talking, I'd like to thank all the old people over the years who have pounded into our heads the importance of our sovereignty. When it was not the word to talk about, they stood up in meetings and said, "Do not forget who you are. Do not forget who you are." So I like to thank them for that message, and all the chiefs and all the people that came before us who have been saying these same things to us. And one time, one of our old persons said to me, she said, "Why do you think people keep saying the same thing over and over again?" She said, "I hear people say, 'Oh, I already heard that. I heard that before.'" She said to me, and she said, "You know why that happens?" I said, "No." And she said, "Because when they said it, nobody acted on it. So they keep saying it until somebody acts on it." So I'm saying to you, they said a lot of things. We have to listen to them and we have to act on it. And we have to stop saying, "Oh, I heard that before." Because if you say you heard that before, that means you didn't do anything. So we need to do something. And so when you say rekindling the the, uh, the fires, I wonder how many people know how to even make kindling. I know how to make kindling. So we need to teach that. And when you make a fire, when you have before how you lay the fire out, with the tobacco and the same and everything. So that's we need we have all the elements. We have everything. All we need to do is we need to act on it so that in the future, when our great grandchildren are sitting there, somebody's not going to say, "Oh, I heard that before," because we'll be living it and reliving it over and over again so that we can go forward the way that the creator and the creation intended us. And yes, I know that the lands have been depleted. I know all these things, but we can also, like the buffalo, we continue to do the buffalo ceremonies. I don't know how long we're going to do the buffalo ceremonies for until the buffalo come back. And it might not be in my time. It might not be in my great grandchild's time, but eventually the buffalo will return to us. Not for us, for me, but for the future, because we need that relationship. And that's why I say rekindling is not a 1 day thing, it's a long term plan. And that's what I saw in that. I think it was your plan that you have for working together. What do you call those things? I don't know what they call them. Everybody has them. Strategic plan. The elders gave us a strategic plan in 1850. So we need to just understand that and move forward. So hi, and thank you very much for inviting me to address your meeting today. Thank you.